Well, welcome on this Tuesday evening. We start with the first question that was sent in prior to this evening. This viewer says, I have listened to some of your video chats and I realize that I am probably the definition of victimhood. I would like to know what my first step is to breaking that habit or cycle. I also do not understand how to get my needs met without having expectations from my partner. Where do I go to get real love, and how can someone else offer me real love if my partner cannot? Isn't the whole purpose of a relationship to love and get your needs met and to love another person and meet their needs? So victimhood is very common. It underlies all of the other getting and protecting behaviors. We act like victims because, well, we're empty and afraid because we haven't gotten the love that we need, and so we feel injured. We really have been victimized. Anytime that you're not loved, somebody expresses disappointment, anger, anything other than loving to you, they are victimizing you. But then it becomes our choice whether we feel like victims. So, sure, we get victimized all the time, anytime anybody's irritated, but we make a choice about whether we're going to act like victims, and most of us do. And we feel fairly justified because people pretty much are always doing something unkind. But we'd be so much happier if we could stop that. Because when we feel like victims, we can get sympathy, we can persuade people to do what we want. But then they're giving it to us because we've pulled it out of them with our victimhood. So it's a miserable way to live. So the first step in breaking that habit or cycle, as you asked, is simply to tell the truth about it. To tell other people, here's something that happened yesterday. My husband did blank, or he didn't do blank. And because I'm feeling empty, because I haven't been sufficiently loved from the time I was a little kid, I felt even more empty. And then I chose to make it all about me. Instead of seeing my husband as empty himself and unable to give me what I want, I chose to feel like I had been traumatized. And so you tell the truth about the choices you're making to feel like a victim. That will help you a lot, because it's very difficult to continue being a victim when we tell other people the truth about it. As opposed to saying, oh, look what he did to me. Well, then the victim cycle will continue forever, because people will always be doing something that you find inconvenient. And then you said, how do you get your needs met for real love? Well, you get real love from the people who have it. And that pretty much follows the first step. As you tell the truth about what you're doing and people accept you, you'll feel much more full. And then when you have maybe not $20 million in the bank, but at least $100 in the bank, and then somebody takes $2 from you, it just won't really be a big deal. How do you go about doing that? Oh, that's described amply in the books, on the videos, on the website, how you go about getting real love. But basically it's going on the conference calls, reading the books, talking to friends, constantly telling the truth about yourself. And if you really need some help, getting a coach, which will help you quite a bit, even more. You said, isn't the purpose of a relationship to love and get your needs met? Well, ideally, but if you're with a partner who is not able to fill your needs for real love, then it becomes pretty counterproductive to keep insisting that person fill your needs. To demand that somebody give us anything they don't have is kind of dumb on our part, but also understandable, because if you're empty enough, you'll demand love from anybody who happens by. And you won't even stop to consider, do they have enough? And it'll take you a lot of practice to do that. You get loved more and more by people. You practice telling the truth. I've known people who've been doing real love for years and then finally go, oh, this is what this feels like, to really tell the truth and quit making excuses and to make decisions toward being loving. So it's a gradual process that requires a lot of practice. This person says, I recently read your book, Real Love and Freedom for the Soul, and it made me realize how much of my adult life I've been living as a victim. Oh, I didn't realize both of these were about victimhood. A couple of weeks ago, I had an incident with my parents where I got angry with them, and I can see now that I was still in a position of blaming them for where I am in my life and feeling angry at many of their decisions early in my life not to love me, and that's why I've struggled in my life since then. So it's very useful for you to see that your parents have not been loving you, probably haven't from the time you were born to the present, which is actually average. Most parents do not unconditionally love their children. Useful to see that only in terms of understanding how you got where you are, rather than seeing that for the reason of blaming them for where you are. The reason that it's good to see that our problems almost always stem from the past is then that at least we don't blame ourselves and we don't blame the people around us presently, our spouses, children, and so on. These problems that we have with feeling loved start way back when we're little children. So good to know about that, good to know that. And then we know the solution. You continue, I realize now that while it is true that I may be a true victim in the sense that I was abandoned by my parents and I haven't felt loved, let's see, it's just hard to make sense of this sentence. So I wonder what I can do now that I'm more enlightened in terms of patching things up with them. I don't really want to phone up and apologize to them. No, at this point that's a little early. So you understand that you have not felt loved. You understand that you need to get love from other people. And it's critical that you get that they didn't mean to do any of this. So when they act like they're incapable of loving you, they're not pretending. They really can't. Knowing that they can't, don't go to them for love. Go to other people in the Real Love community. Go to people that you've maybe given the Real Love book to so that they understand what truly accepting you looks like. Then, as you feel more accepted, you feel more loved and loving, you'll discover that your need to demand love from your parents will slowly disappear. You'll see them as crippled rather than as unloving, certainly not intentionally unloving. And bit by bit, you will come to accept them, to care about them, but it goes in a stepwise pattern. First the truth, then you come to accept where they really are, even if they don't tell you the truth. You know the truth. And then you'll come to the place where you can simply accept their behavior and eventually genuinely care about them. But to apologize to them for the mistakes you've made in your relationship with them, it's probably a little early for that. It was their job to love you from childhood onward, and you need to get to the place where you can accept that they have not, before you get to where you apologize for your mistakes in your relationship with them, even though you do need to, eventually. And eventually you'll apologize to them for being blaming or angry or attacking, not so much for their benefit, and certainly not to get their forgiveness, but just because it will unburden you from the negative feelings that you have toward them. In many ways, you say, I have not taken responsibility for some poor decisions I've taken in my life. The thing is, when I start to think about how many mistakes I've made and how much I wasn't taught to be responsible and how loved I have felt, I feel overwhelmed and don't want to face what a mess I've made of things. How can I move past this remorse and regret, as of course it doesn't get me anywhere? Do I just have to decide to leave it behind? Or is it always about real love? Get more real love so that I have no need to cling to what is past. It would be nice if you could just make a decision to move on. And you can at least consciously look toward moving past your past. But simply making a decision won't be enough. You can't move on past your wounds until you have begun to heal. And that's why it's important for you to tell the truth about yourself to some people who can unconditionally accept you. So it's a simultaneous process. One is intellectual, realizing that your parents really did the best with what they had at the time. They did the best they could, even if it was not enough. And then the second part is you getting enough love for yourself so that you don't feel as empty and have to demand it from them. This viewer says, first, yesterday I was with some friends at a play group. I'm a stay-at-home mom of 3 small children. I hadn't caught up with a few of the women in a while, and we were talking as best we could between caring for kids, and I found myself wanting to jump into the conversation repeatedly. It was almost as if it wasn't possible for me to let it be all about them and give them the chance to finish speaking. I was aware of what was going on, and despite my intention to just listen, it felt almost unbearable to not bring it back to me. I want to be a listener who can just be with another person and their happiness, but how do I get to the place where it's not so hard? Most change involves 2 things, the truth and love. So, what's the truth in this case? As you feel yourself filled with this desire to butt in, you might just say to yourself, what am I doing here? Here's somebody who's sharing a piece of their soul, a piece of them, which means when people speak, what do they want more than anything else? They want to be listened to. That's why they're talking. If they didn't want to be listened to, they wouldn't be opening their mouths. So here's a person sharing a piece of their soul, and I'm about to interrupt them. You just need to remind yourself of how selfish that is, but also understandable. If you feel sufficiently empty and there are a bunch of people around talking and there are all those listening ears, how natural that you'd want some of those listening ears to be devoted to you. But when you see that you're thinking only about yourself, it will help you to be able to stop doing that. You'll at least see how selfish it is. Then the love part. As long as you feel starving to death, mostly you don't care whether other people get listened to and loved. You want it all to be about you. So I get it. And that means that you'll need to more and more tell the truth about yourself to people who can genuinely love you. And the more loved you feel, the less impulse will occur to you to interrupt people and demand their listening ear. Because, of course, if you have to demand it, if you have to interrupt to get listened to, you're not going to feel loved anyway because you manipulated people to listen to you. Here's a viewer who says, I'm really wanting to attack my husband right now. I'm feeling like a victim and I want to lash out at him and blame him for my unhappiness. I want to run and attack at the same time to shopping to fill my emptiness. I'm feeling very alone in parenting and running a household. I'm expecting more from him and want him to step up while I'm pregnant. I'm tired. I already have a child. Our marriage has been lousy for many years, and sometimes I just want to quit. I'm in attack mode. I want to hurt my husband because he's selfish and inconveniences me every day. Right now, I'm living with it and hating it. I don't want to make decisions to help myself because I'm just too darn tired. When he gets angry at me, he tells our son that I am a witch or that I don't love him. He actually says, Mommy doesn't love you. When we're having good moments and I let him know what he's teaching our son when he says that, he gets defensive and tells me how wrong I am for what I've done. And then, of course, I agree with him. He never admits he's wrong, and I expect him to. So it sounds like you have a marriage that's been filled with unhappiness for a long time. And I wonder if you mentioned that you're pregnant with another child. You need to, I would suggest you at least look at why you decided to have another child when you were in a marriage with somebody with whom you're very unhappy. Whether you thought that somehow this child would bring you closer together, or that perhaps you'd have another person in the family to love you. Something just to consider. And if it sounds like your husband is quite a victim, isn't responsible for anything, doesn't admit he's wrong, which are all characteristics of victims. And the approach is the same pretty much with all victims. You be as loving as you can with him. That means you have to get enough love from other people that you don't feel so empty that you attack him when he inconveniences you, when he doesn't give you what you want. But then eventually Eventually you're going to have conversations with him about what he does. And when you talk to him, for example, about the message that he communicates to your son when he says, Mommy doesn't love you, and he then gets angry, you really need some practice. I would suggest reading Real Love and Freedom for the Soul. I would suggest talking to a coach. I would suggest participating in the conference calls and actually practicing what you say to him. Because, see, so far what happens is, you said it right here, he gets angry at you and tells you you're bad, and then you end up agreeing with him and it stops. Well, look what you're doing. You're training him to get angry and blame you. The whole reason he does it is so that you will back off and never tell him anything he doesn't like. And so then when he throws a fit, what do? You back off. What do you think he's going to do the next time? He's going to do exactly the same thing, if not more. So at some point, you need to stop this cycle. And in the middle of his blaming, literally stop him and go, we're talking about your behavior and how it's affecting our relationship and affecting our son. Now, I've already told you about the mistakes that I've made. I already did that. But that's not the subject of this minute. When I make mistakes, I tell you, I did that wrong. When you make mistakes, you yell and scream at me and defend yourself. And if that continues, this isn't going to work out very well. Nothing can change until you tell the truth. And when you say to our son, Mommy is a witch and doesn't love you, is that loving or is it not? Would that tend to help him to grow up to be a responsible and caring adult or not? Do you really care about our son? Because if you do, you'll teach him the principles that will help him to be happy. And will that make him a loving and happy person? Obviously not. It's virtually certain that one or both of his parents talk to each other like this, and you might remind him of that. I'm sure at times that you've hated it when your parents spoke ill of each other. And here you are doing the same thing. So you have to do this with zero irritation. There can't be any impatience at all. But he has to hear this, because although it can be very effective to have just one partner become loving, if the other partner's a profound victim and is never wrong, it's unlikely that that other partner will ever really feel the effect of the introduction of real love into the partnership. So at some point you're going to have to talk straight to him, and you may need help doing that. This viewer says, lately my boyfriend has been experiencing episodes. Let's see, let's do another one. Here's one that says, my husband and I are getting a divorce. I found out he was having multiple affairs and is a porn addict. He's even used porn on our 6-year-old daughter's computer. I would have been willing to work on this relationship, but when I found out what he was doing, he actually became angrier and threw me out of the house. We had a prenuptial agreement that said that the house would always be his. I'm suing for primary custody, and I didn't think that would be a problem considering his behavior. He's always been a kind father to our daughter, but I don't trust him now with her, now that I know about his dishonesty and infidelity. But he's responded by suing for primary custody himself, claiming that our daughter would be better off in the house where she was raised. And he's suing to have her 2/3 of the time. This is turning into a real fight, and I can't understand his behavior considering the things that he's done. Start with the affairs. He had the affairs because he was empty and afraid and alone. And because he felt empty and alone, he went out looking for whatever form of imitation love he could find to make himself feel better. He's probably used working extra hours, maybe drinking, who knows what he's also done, but you know that he has gone out and found imitation love in the arms of what sounds like multiple women. Very understandable. Wrong, but still very understandable behavior. And you need to identify your role in this. At some point, you need to be able to tell the truth to other people, not about how you've been hurt. When people say, oh, I'm so angry, I'm so hurt. That's not really the truth about them. That's really more the truth about what other people have done to them. So you need to tell the truth about what did you do to contribute to his feeling empty and afraid. Were you unkind, controlling? Did you withdraw affection? Were you critical? Did you fail to share yourself intimately with him? You'll know the answers to those. I can't, just from what's written here. But it's virtually certain that even though he came to your relationship empty and afraid, your behavior in many ways probably worsened his emptiness. That doesn't make it your fault that he went out and had affairs, but certainly you made some contribution. And you need to recognize that. Why? Not to make him feel better, because you're not even going to tell him this, not at this point, but so that you can feel unconditionally loved for being yourself, rather than getting sympathy for how you were hurt. And that's what most people do. In a separation, when they've been injured, they talk all about how they've been injured, and then all they get is sympathy, which just confirms their victimhood, and then nothing goes well after that. So when you're kind of wondering about his behavior, why would he be the one who gets angry when he was the one who was unfaithful and cheating and lying? And well, when you're confronted with your behavior that's wrong, there's only two ways to go for most people, and that is change, admit you're wrong, and change your life. That's the first choice. Or the second choice, blame the person who is pointing out that you're wrong. Most people go for the second choice because it's easier. It's easier when you tell me that I've made a mistake for me to just attack you and say you're being unkind and you make those mistakes too and how dare you, and then I can get you to back off, and then as far as I'm concerned, your description of my mistake vanishes. Regrettably, that keeps me the same. I never improve, I never learn anything, and I destroy all the relationships I'm in, but for a brief moment, it makes me feel better about myself. So now, what do you do now? Now that he's separated from you and you're divorcing, how do you handle this? Throughout the entire business, you need to be as unconditionally loving as possible toward your daughter, toward your soon-to-be ex-husband, toward everyone. But loving does not mean that you become a doormat. It doesn't mean you give him everything he wants. It doesn't mean that you say, oh, well, okay, why don't you just take custody of our daughter and do whatever you want to? No, you still get to first, if possible, talk to him in a sensible way about sharing the custody of your daughter. And I would encourage you not to go for more than 50% of your daughter's time, because then he'll just feel attacked. If that doesn't work, just being sensible, certainly the cheaper way, then you may have to go the way of the lawyers and simply let a lawyer advocate for you, but at no point be unkind to this man. But you do, and then, so of course you want to do everything that you can to be loving your daughter during this business. And you might even say to him, and I realize this could sound even a little bit like blackmail. Maybe it is. Emotional blackmail. I'm not sure there's a criminal charge attached to this, but you might even say to him, look, why don't we just do this sensibly? Let's just split the custody. You give me some kind of child support, because apparently he was the primary breadwinner. And if we can just do this sensibly, splitting her time evenly, then we won't have to go to court where I would have to talk about all of your behaviors, where I would have to say that you'd been unfaithful and cheated and been a porn addict and looked at porn on your daughter's computer, and then have the entire community know, because these public records can be accessed by anybody. And you know how people love to talk. So if you did this wouldn't be for the purpose of attacking him. It would be for the purpose of avoiding a contentious lawsuit and avoiding further harm as the two of you struggle over this, harm to your daughter. Here's another viewer who says, while talking to my wife Susan this morning, I was struck by the fact that she rarely utters a sentence without the word try. I was talking to her, asking if she could do some tasks, and here were her statements. I will try to get to the store and buy food for dinner tonight. I will try to let you know if I cannot make dinner. I will try to talk to the plumber and see if I can get him out here to work on, things in the bathroom. Now, I happen to know this woman, and she's a victim to everybody and everything. And there's no real discrimination between people and things. She always has an excuse. Nor can she ever be wrong. She has to blame somebody. Now, this is understandable because when our short-term goal in life is to experience no pain, no criticism, well, then acting like a victim and always being right is a moderately effective short-term cure. But it keeps us dead. So on an occasion when she isn't presently being a victim, you might say to her something like this: Sweetie, I'd like to talk to you about something that's interfering with your happiness. You don't have to change your behavior, but I can tell you that this behavior of yours is causing you unhappiness, and it's interfering with the health of our relationship. When I ask you to do something, you often respond with how you will try. And then you could give her the 3 examples that you just gave me. When you say that you will try, you're simply not committed to do it. And then if anything at all comes up, you eagerly use whatever comes up, and it doesn't matter whether it's conscious or not, as a reason for not doing whatever you are asked. Now, what you call a reason is really an excuse. But I understand that to you, it seems like a reason. The problem is that there's always a reason for you. There's always a reason for you to not do something you're supposed to do. You're tired, you're sick, somebody else called on the phone, some emergency came up. The entire point of making commitments, however, is that you get the important things done first, and that you take care of your important relationships first. So if you allow every little thing that comes up to take up your time, the important things will never get done. Just as important, when you don't do something that I've asked you to do, you're telling me that pretty much everybody else and everything else on the planet is more important than I am. There's really not much of another way to see this. So when you make a commitment and something else comes up, when you've made a commitment, the responsible and loving thing is to tell whatever came up at the last minute, I'm sorry, I already have plans. And that's something that just seems to kill you to do, because you're constantly trying not to displease people in any given moment. So if somebody comes up at the last minute thing, you say, okay, I'll do it, so that they will like you, rather than telling them, I already have an appointment for that time. And the appointment may be only to go to the grocery store and get something for dinner. But it's still an appointment. It's something that you committed to do. And you don't see the commitments that you've made as important. You just blow them off. You take care of whatever fire is happening in that second, whoever is facing you. Just like when I then come and talk to you and ask you why you didn't do it, you immediately start telling lies, really, about why you didn't do it. Instead of saying, well, I was dishonest. When somebody came to me and said, could I do it? I just went, sure. Well, that's a lie. Because actually the truth is, no, you can't do it. Because you committed already to me to fix dinner, for example. But you lie to them and tell them you'd be glad to do it because you want them to like you. And you don't tell them that. That's what makes it a lie. So it's important when you make a commitment to stick with them, to even write them down so that you remember what you agreed to do that day, and say no to everything else. And and this is me speaking as though I were you still, and I'm not suggesting that you do anything that I don't do already myself. When my boss asks me to show up to work every day, I don't tell him I'll try. When he gives me assignments to do at work, I don't tell him I'll try. I simply get them done. And most of the assignments have a deadline. So I really have to get them done. I can't say, well, I was tired, or my foot hurts, or I have a headache, or no. I just have to do it. And, frankly, you have a job. You have jobs here to do at home, and they're not getting done because you don't see it as an important job. So that's what I suggest that you say to her. Now, she will get angry. She will. As you go to tell a victim that they've been making a mistake, they'll often go nuclear on you because it's their whole method of being to avoid any short-term pain. And here you are telling her she's been wrong. Oh, can't have that. So she's going to reach into her ample bag of excuses and anger and protecting behaviors, and she's going to attempt to beat you to death with them. If you back off, she will learn once again that those behaviors work. The only reason that this woman has been saying, I'll try to you all these years, is because you've let her. So, in addition to what I recommend that you say to her here, I also recommend that in the future, when you say to her, I'd like you to do a thing, and she says, I'll try, you stop right then and you say, that won't be good enough. If you say that you will try, I have no idea whether you'll do it. So are you willing to say, I will do that? And I will do that by X time on X day. Otherwise, if she's not willing to commit to doing it and setting a time for it to be done, the odds of it getting done are very slim. People just don't do things when their commitment to it is mild to negligible. This viewer says, how does one stop feeling like a victim when they experience a job loss or a relationship breaks up? These events happened many months ago, and yet I still feel upset about it. The job loss has caused serious financial repercussions, lack of income, and the relationship breakup has left me with a broken heart. I know I was very empty at the time these events occurred. Any ideas on how to feel better? I do know that I need to make calls and go to group meetings, both of which I do. Am I supposed to do more of this, or is there something else I need or can do? All right, so take the job loss. First, you need to tell the truth about, was there anything that you did to contribute to the job loss? Were you laid off but other people were not? In other words, is there any reason to suppose that you had some degree of responsibility in this? It doesn't matter whether your boss was a stinker or people didn't understand you, or did you make any contribution in this? I suggest that you fully tell the truth about what your life was like on the job, and see if other people can help identify how you were a problem employee, whether you acted like a victim, whether you were unreliable, whether you were like the woman that I just discussed who is always telling her husband, I'll try, whether you had difficulty in relationships with coworkers and so on. Until we tell the truth about what we did, we'll always be victimized. And as long as I'm looking to blame other people, I'm always going to feel like a victim. That can change a lot when I simply tell the truth about my part, even if it was only 10% of the problem. As I focus on what I can do differently, I will tend not to feel victimized. Now, let's say that your company was simply getting smaller and smaller and they had to lay people off and it was just your turn. Well then, honey, it rains on everybody. Stuff just happens. And if you had absolutely no part in it and you lost your job, well then, I'll be. We also get sick. People have strokes. They fall over dead. They get cancer. Stuff happens. And this is one of those stuffs. So we can't avoid that. What we do determine is how we react to it. You can look at it as an opportunity to pick up and move on and do something else. Maybe that you enjoy better. Maybe that you'll get paid better doing. Who knows? Whether you get paid more is not the point in the new job. The point is, it's an opportunity to learn to deal with difficulties and to pick yourself up and remember what's really happened, what's really important. When we are subject to just the conditions that go on around us, the things that happen to us, then we remain slaves to circumstances forever. So here's a great chance for you to be reminded of what's important, feeling loved, loving other people, and then the other things tend to take their proper place in perspective. As far as the loss of the relationship, again, a wonderful opportunity for you to tell the truth. Pretty rare for a relationship to fall apart and have it be all the fault of one person. So you have an opportunity here to talk to people and tell them, well, I wasn't unconditionally caring, I was critical, I was angry, I was controlling, I was withdrawing. Whatever you did in that relationship that communicated to your partner that you didn't love him or her. I can't tell whether this is from a man or a woman by first look. So whatever you did that was unloving, the more you can talk about that, the more you will then learn from your experience in that relationship and be able to move on to a healthier one. In fact, as you identify these characteristics in yourself, you may be able to see how you attracted possibly an unhealthy partner in the first place. So you're being able to be truthful about yourself here, about both the relationship and the job, is huge. And then remember that things just happen, and now you get to decide whether you learn from those things or not. That's what makes us who we are, is the choices we make, not the things that happen to us. This viewer says, yesterday my husband and I were going to the airport to pick up a friend. And we wanted to spend the time together with each other and with the friend after we picked her up. My 8-year-old daughter has become rather manipulative with what we have taught her about real love. She said that she wanted to go to the airport, and when we told her no, she said that that was proof that we didn't love her. Clever little stickers. She cried, she stomped off into her room, the whole deal. So maybe this is a time when we needed to show her our love and take her with us. Absolutely not. Your daughter isn't asking you for real love. She's manipulating you for acceptance, for your time. She's manipulating you for a sense of control or power. And if you take her, right while she's demanding that you take her, you won't be giving her real love, and she certainly won't feel it, because deep down she knows that she's had to manipulate you for it. Now, she's not conscious of this, but when we give something to somebody who's demanding it by having a crying fit, for example, they just take it as payment for their manipulation. They do not take it as unconditional love. Then, of course, as you reward her for her fit, she's going to do it the next time and want more and more, and in the end, it is never enough. And this is exactly how you train a victim. If you want to train somebody to be a victim as an adult, then respond to them while they're a child and going, oh, you don't love me. And then you give her what she wants and she goes, wow, this is great. If I whine and cry and act like a baby, I get what I want. I've been victimized by these terrible people, and so all I have to do is whine about it and they'll give me what I'm demanding. Whoa, you just trained a victim, and it takes almost no time to train one. Much harder to train somebody to be loving, even though it's more effective and lasts longer. But training a victim takes minutes. So, 1, keep teaching her about real love. Teach her what it really is. Teach her that it's not about getting everything you want. It's about people unconditionally caring about your happiness, which means giving you what you need. What we want and what we need are different. So teach her what her tantrums mean. That's also a part of teaching her about real love, that it's just a manipulation and will never bring anybody genuinely closer to her. Second, love her as much as you can. Be constantly working on unsolicited, unprovoked acts of kindness toward her, where she's not demanding it. Spend all the time that you possibly can reading with her, touching her, looking at her, and looking her in the eye, that kind of thing, so that she feels loved enough that when you have to leave her, she doesn't feel desperate and have to manipulate you to give her attention. And then third, don't feel guilty. Children just manipulate their parents with guilt to get what they want. The parents then give in. Well, now you don't feel guilty, but the child's been taught how to be a victim and how to be demanding and manipulative. So you're destroying your child when you give in to guilt. Again, teach her that you're there to give her what she needs, not necessarily everything she wants. It's an important distinction to teach a child, that telling them no is often the most loving thing that you can do. That her going to the airport with you on an adult activity where you're going to spend your time talking to an adult simply isn't appropriate. You're going to be having adult conversations. You're going to go and spend time just like she spends time with her friends. What if every time she went with her friends to play dolls or video, whatever she does, you came in and intruded on their activities? No, there's some things you do with friends your own age, and she needs to understand that. And remember that you're teaching her to be responsible and to be loving and to listen, not just to make her life pain-free, a subject that very few parents understand and remember, that we're not here to make our children's lives constantly comfortable. Here's a reader or a viewer who for quite some time has had difficulty in her relationships. They end up badly, and then she gets angry and feels guilty. And I asked her to tell the truth about herself, just about her, rather than telling the truth about how she's been hurt. Here's an example of truth-telling. She said, I've been working very hard all my life to get love from people who don't have it. That's a brilliant realization. Once we see that we've been trying to get love from people and that they don't have it, we can finally begin to stop. We can quit manipulating these people who are empty and finally get it where we have some hope of getting it. 2, one of the ways I've been doing that is to try to be whatever way people wanted me to be. Beautiful, attractive, intelligent, dumb, quiet, funny, whatever. And isn't that exhausting? When we're trying constantly to get people to like us, we end up lying, manipulative, it's tiresome, and in the end, we never get loved unconditionally. So for all, it's got to be one of the ultimate ironies in life that we work hardest for what matters least. We work hardest for imitation love that will never make us happy. 3rd, I've wanted everybody to approve of me. And it's been a great deal of work. 4th, the people I wanted to love me were often critical, which of course is what has made you afraid and manipulative and acting like a victim. 5th, when these people would criticize me while they were disappointed and angry, I made it about me. Now, when you're a child, that's entirely understandable. When an adult criticizes you and is angry and tells you you're a bad person, even if it's just with their tone, of course you make it about you. Because no 3-year-old is going to look up at his parent and go, so this is really more about you feeling unloved than it is about me, right? Come on, no 3-year-old's going to do that. 6, these critical people may have been right, and I may have been wrong, but their anger and disappointment were not about me and didn't make me unlovable. Exactly. So even when you made mistakes and these people were critical and angry, you may have been wrong in making that mistake. But no other person, no adult, no parent, nobody is ever justified in being angry at you for your mistake and making you feel like a worthless person. 8, I don't have to believe everything a critical, angry, and disappointed person says about me. No, you don't. Now, when you're a child, you really kind of do it because you don't have the perspective to step back and say it's about them. But now that you're an adult, you don't have to keep reliving your childhood, which most of us do. All of our lives, we relive our childhood. Even when our parents die, we make other people into our surrogate parents, and we keep repeating the same behavioral patterns. 9, I don't have to choose to be around these people, and I don't need to try to get them to love me. Bless your heart, you really don't. When you're a child, you have no choice. When you're around unloving parents, you're stuck. But as an adult, you can make a loving choice to no longer be around people who are critical and unkind and interfere with your growth. 10, I can, if I'm able, be willing to be wrong with these critical and unloving people, but expecting them to love me if I do that is farcical. We can tell the truth about ourselves all the time. But we're going to discover that some people, as we tell the truth, are going to be more critical. Others will unconditionally accept us. And as we tell the truth to people who are unloving, expecting them to accept us, it's kind of silly, because then we're going to be endlessly disappointed, and because they simply can't give it. 11. I have deeply believed that if I am wrong, I am unlovable. For me, being ugly, old, imperfect, stupid, slow, difficult, whatever, meant that I was wrong and unlovable. There wasn't a lot I could do right. And as a child, you had every reason to believe this, because when you did make mistakes and you were ugly, slow, whatever it was, people, I'm sure, did criticize you with anger, and they told you that you were unlovable, and you just really had no choice in the matter. But now that you're an adult, you can see the truth, that the only time somebody's angry at you, they're telling you about them, that they're not capable of being loving. Once you get that, you're not a captive to other people's opinions ever again. Not either their negative opinions or even their positive opinions. People can entrap you by praising you as much as they can by criticizing you. And last, I'm going to need a lot of unconditional love to feel okay. Until then, I will still continue to feel more afraid than is necessary. So look what you've done here just in this series of truth-tellings. You understand that it's partly a matter of being truthful and changing your perspective of the world, and partly it's a matter of actually getting unconditionally loved to the point where somebody's unloving comments don't completely empty you out. If we could all do that, we wouldn't get empty. We wouldn't feel frightened. We wouldn't be repeating the patterns of our childhoods. So we've gotten to the end of our hour. I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday. Great questions as usual, and as always, remember between now and then that it's always about real love. We'll see you then.